Star Trek's Prime and Kelvin timelines officially collide in new crossover. Star Trek's Prime and Kelvin timelines are soon to meet in an epic new crossover. The Prime Star Trek universe was just destroyed, thanks to lore and the Bajoran Orb of Destruction. Now, without a universe to call their own, Captain Sisko and the crew of the Theseus are adrift in the Star Trek multiverse, and in Star Trek #25, find themselves facing the Kelvin Universe Enterprise. Star Trek #25 was written by Jackson Lansing and Colin Kelly and drawn by Liana Kangas. After the destruction of the universe, the Theseus was hurled into fluidic space. They narrowly escaped it, seemingly finding themselves back home. However, Data notices the stars are not correct, and they have in fact traveled 120 years into the past. The crew barely have any time to collect themselves before they are hailed by the Enterprise. However, it is the Kelvin Enterprise, and Captain Kirk informs Sisko, "We've been expecting you." In the mid-2000s, after the critical and commercial back-to-back failures of Star Trek Nemesis and Star Trek Enterprise, Paramount decided to completely reboot the franchise, creating the Kelvin timeline as a means of doing so. The point of divergence happened when the Narada, a renegade Romulan ship, traveled back to the early 23rd century and attacked the USS Kelvin, thus giving the timeline its name. In this new timeline, history played out slightly differently, but ultimately brought the crew of the Enterprise together. Furthermore, the technology was more advanced and flashier. Star Trek's Kelvin timeline lasted across 3 feature films, as well as a variety of titles from IDW, but as time passes, the opportunity for a 4th movie dwindles, making comics perhaps the only place fans can get more of these characters. After chronicling extensively the adventures of the Kelvin Enterprise, IDW is bringing them back one more time to meet with Captain Benjamin Sisko. Still reeling from losing his universe, and with the threat of lore still hanging over everything, Captain Sisko needs all the allies he can get. Star Trek's Prime and Kelvin timelines have met before however. This is not the first time the Prime and Kelvin universes have collided. Prime Spock lived out the remainder of his life in the Kelvin universe, and it has been acknowledged on both Star Trek Discovery and Prodigy. The biggest crossover between the two universes, however, actually occurred in issues 35 to 40 of IDW's first Star Trek comic. Q from the Prime universe paid a call to the crew of the Kelvin Enterprise. The storyline, titled The Q Gambit, also saw the Pa-Wraiths crossover, as well as Q's supercharge with the powers of the Bajoran prophets. It is worth noting that during the Q Gambit, none of the crew from either the Prime or Kelvin timelines met each other, making the crossover that is coming in Star Trek #26 a historic occasion. When Kelvin Kirk meets Sisko, he tells the incredulous captain that he has been expecting him. This raises the question of how Kirk would know of Sisko in the first place, and it may very well lie in the Q Gambit. Q may have known about Lore's future actions and apprised Kelvin Kirk to expect him. In a groundbreaking development for Star Trek fans, the once distinct Prime and Kelvin timelines are officially set to collide in an unprecedented crossover event, sending ripples across the vast Star Trek multiverse. For decades, fans have speculated, debated, and theorized about the possibility of these two iconic timelines intersecting. Now, it seems their wishes are being fulfilled in a storyline that promises to explore the very essence of time, space, and destiny within the Star Trek universe. The background, Prime and Kelvin timelines. To understand the significance of this event, it's essential to revisit the origins of both the Prime and Kelvin timelines. The Prime timeline is the original Star Trek universe, starting with Star Trek, the original series in the 1960s, and continuing through subsequent shows and films, including Star Trek, The Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, and Enterprise. It's the canonical universe where we first met iconic characters like Captain James T., Kirk, Spock, and Dr. McCoy. The Prime timeline has evolved over the years, leading to modern series like Star Trek Discovery and Star Trek Picard. In contrast, the Kelvin timeline was introduced in J.J. Abrams' 2009 Star Trek film, a bold reimagining that took the franchise in a new direction. The Kelvin timeline was born out of a time travel incident where a Romulan ship from the Prime timeline traveled back in time and attacked the USS Kelvin, altering history. As a result, this new timeline created alternate versions of Kirk, Spock, and the rest of the Enterprise crew, with their stories unfolding in a different universe. The Kelvin timeline has produced 3 films to date: Star Trek 2009, Star Trek Into Darkness 2013, and Star Trek Beyond 2016. While these 2 timelines have operated independently, they've always shared a common origin, the universe from which they diverged. However, up until now, they've remained separate entities, with no official crossover between the 2. That's all about to change. The collision, a multiverse event. The concept of multiverses is not new to Star Trek. Throughout its history, the franchise has explored alternate realities and parallel universes, most notably the Mirror Universe, where evil versions of the familiar Starfleet crew exist. However, the Prime and Kelvin timelines have always been treated as distinct, with fans often debating whether they could ever converge. The new crossover promises to break down the walls separating these timelines, creating an event that will redefine what it means to live in the Star Trek multiverse. While details remain scarce, reports suggest that the collision of these 2 timelines will involve a complex storyline that spans both space and time. It's likely to feature a combination of characters from both timelines, with the potential for beloved figures like the Prime timeline's Jean-Luc Picard or Kelvin timeline's Kirk interacting for the first time. Storyline possibilities. The potential for storytelling is limitless in this crossover, and there are several exciting possibilities for how the collision between the Prime and Kelvin timelines might unfold. One theory is that the crossover could revolve around a major time travel incident, perhaps involving a cataclysmic event that threatens the fabric of both universes. The Prime and Kelvin timelines, while different, share a common origin, and it's possible that their divergence has created a destabilizing effect on the multiverse. If these timelines were to collide, it might be up to crews from both universes to work together to prevent a complete breakdown of spacetime. Another possibility is that the event could involve the discovery of an entirely new, even more advanced alien species or technology capable of transcending universes. Such a discovery could force Starfleet officers from both timelines to cooperate, despite their differences, in order to navigate this new reality. Alternatively, the storyline could involve an exploration of how different versions of the same characters might interact. Imagine a Prime timeline version of Spock encountering his Kelvin counterpart. How would they perceive each other? Would they agree on matters of logic and duty, or would their differing experiences lead to conflict? This type of character-driven storytelling would offer rich emotional depth and provide fans with fresh insights into their favorite characters. The challenges and excitement bringing the Prime and Kelvin timelines together is no small feat, and there are undoubtedly challenges involved in making this crossover feel organic rather than forced. The Prime timeline is steeped in decades of lore, with rich and complex histories for each character, while the Kelvin timeline, although newer, has carved out its own space with its bold, action-oriented style. One challenge will be balancing these 2 distinct tones. The Prime timeline, particularly in its modern iterations like Picard, has embraced more introspective, philosophical storytelling, while the Kelvin timeline is known for its fast-paced, high-stakes adventures. Finding a way to merge these 2 styles into a cohesive narrative will be key to the crossover's success. At the same time, there's no denying the excitement surrounding this event. Fans of both timelines have long dreamed of seeing their favorite characters interact, and the collision of these 2 universes